Hey guys, so after reading the comments, apparently some of you do want to know the labor and delivery side of Liam's birth. So let's see. I have a notebook in front of me because that is one thing that I managed to do at the hospital between Job and I was write down a timeline and write down everything about the delivery because I knew there was no way I was going to remember all of that, and I really wanted to. Well, I wanted to remember some of it. Not the painful parts, but anyway, so I will be looking down at my notes for the most part so that I can clue you guys in. Anyways, I was induced because I was 2 weeks overdue. I was due on October 18th, and he was born November 2nd. So I was 2 weeks overdue, and so I went in to be induced Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. I was given the Cervidil, which is to thin your cervix. I was given that because my cervix was only 70% thinned out of 100%, and that was after 2 weeks. So, or 2 weeks being overdue. And as far as being dilated, out of the 10 centimeters, I was only at 2. So the plan when I went there was to get the Cervidil Tuesday night and then to get the Pitocin Wednesday morning. So I got there Tuesday night. We stopped and got Wegmans on the way. That's part of my notes. I don't know if anyone cares, but we did. And then let's see, I started Cervidil officially at 8:15, and then it's a 2-hour wait before you can get up and move around. So for the first 2 hours, you have to just lay there and let it do its thing. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Cervidil is supposed to stay in for 12 hours. So this was an overnight process. That's why I went in Tuesday night to actually be induced Wednesday was the plan. So at 10:30, just over my 2-hour mark, now I'm able to move around. I wanted a room with a jacuzzi and a hot tub, so it wasn't available when I first got to the hospital, but then after my 2 hours that I had to wait, it became available so that they moved me to that room, and thank God they did because I used the bejesus out of that jacuzzi. Okay, let's see. After that, it was just like blood pressure checks. I did have to get an early IV because Liam's blood pressure was reading low. So they administered something through the IV. I'm not sure what it was. I did not write that down. Let's see. Oh, and I was able to eat. That was something that was a big thing for me because I have a sensitive stomach. So right away I was given, I'm trying to find what it was called. I don't know what it was called. Let's see. I'm not finding it. If I do find it, then I will let you guys know. I have it somewhere in my notes. But anyways, I was given something for nausea. I had read up on it before I went to the hospital because I knew that this would be a problem. So over the course of my hospital stay, I was actually given the medication for the nausea twice. So I was given that, and then I was able to eat afterwards. So I had packed, I think my snack bag was literally as big as my hospital bag. I had everything from apples and almond butter packets to hard candies, sugar-free hard candies, to applesauce packets, to beef jerky for Job. I mean, it was ridiculous. It really was. But I'm really glad that I had it because it was able to keep me sustained pretty much the entire stay. So that was awesome. Anyways, I ended up going through the night, and then at 7:45, so a half hour early, they removed the Cervidil because I was thin completely, and I was actually in pre-labor contractions at this point. Meaning I wasn't in labor contractions, it wasn't time to push, but my contractions were close enough together and long enough that, or severe enough, whatever you want to call it, that I was considered pre-labor at this point. So let the fun begin, basically. I started using the medicine ball. I was within 40 minutes of that, my contractions were 3 minutes apart, consistently 3 minutes apart. Let's see, at 10 o'clock a.m. that morning, I was 100% thin still, and then I was 3 centimeters dilated at this point. So they decided to hold off on the Pitocin. They didn't administer that for me. They they thought that it wasn't necessary at this point, that the Cervidil had actually sent me into labor, and so they weren't going to give me the Pitocin unless my contractions started slowing down, because sometimes that'll happen, they told me. So let's see, after that, they checked the baby around 12:30, around lunchtime, and I was at 5 centimeters, so another 2 centimeters dilated, and that Job took over the notes at this point because I am having serious contractions and no medication at this point. So he starts taking over the notes. Anyways, he puts baby as excellent. So they were monitoring both of us the entire time, and he was really healthy. I did have to get an antibiotic for strep. Strep is a culture that all women carry. It's just a matter of how high your levels are. My levels were a little bit higher than normal, so I did have to get an antibiotic for that. It's to protect Liam from contracting pneumonia after he's delivered. So at least that was my understanding of it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's see. So at this point, I did decide to get an epidural because I had reached 6 centimeters dilated at this point, and I'm on about I don't know. I think I went almost 12 hours of having what was considered pre-labor contractions before I got anything, and I wasn't dilating as quickly as what I had hoped I would. At this point I was 6 centimeters dilated, but it had been about 10-12 hours, so I still was looking at potentially another 6 to 8 hours, not necessarily, but potentially. And so I decided to get an epidural at this point, and because I got the epidural, I also decided to get the Pitocin because if I couldn't feel the contractions, we might as well speed this up a little bit. That's what I was thinking. So I did get the Pitocin. Let's see. Oh, and after I got that, they decided to also strip the membranes because there were a few that were still clinging to his head. So after they stripped those, I immediately went to 8 centimeters dilated. So we are making some progress. Let's see. I asked for a hot blanket. Job took that down. Thank you, husband. Good note taking. Let's see. Oh, and at 6 o'clock, I started pushing. So I don't know if that was really that entertaining of a story, but that's what it was. So I started pushing at 6 p.m. They had me rotating. I had this peanut ball, it's called, and it's like this inflatable ball that you put in between your legs to widen your hips so that the baby can come out easier or quicker, supposedly. So they had me rotating. I would push on my back, and then they would switch me to my side on my left, and then I would push that way to my right, push that way back onto my back, and continue to push that way, which apparently worked because Liam was born at 6:55, which was just under an hour, which is considered pretty quick for your first baby. So let's see. I had, as far as if there are any guys watching, I'm very sorry for this next part, but as far as tears go, my perineal didn't tear, which is unheard of for a lot of women with their first time babies, but I did have second degree bilateral tears, which is the muscles. So let's see, they were worried about potential blood clots, so they did keep me in my room. You were supposed to be transferred after 2 hours, and I had to stay a little bit longer, and they kept my IV in just in case there were blood clotting issues, because when they went to clean my sutures in order to move me to the next room, I was still bleeding quite a bit, and so they thought I might have blood clot in my uterus, but they kept me there and they kept me monitored, and come to find out I was perfectly fine. So at that point they moved me to the recovery room, and it was about 10:30 at that point. And then the last note is that we watched Game 7 of the World Series because that's how I roll. So that is the labor and delivery story. Those are all the notes that I have. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask them. I will try and answer them. Yeah, I wasn't planning on getting an epidural when I went to the hospital, and I really wanted to avoid the Pitocin, but I was also trying to stay open-minded because I didn't want it to be a super stressful environment for myself. I didn't want it to be super stressful and taxing on Liam and his body. And so at that point, that's just what I felt was best, and that's what we decided to do. And So he was born, he was 21.5 inches long, and he was born 7 pounds and 7 ounces. And then when we were discharged from the hospital, he had dropped down to 7 pounds and 2 ounces, which they said was perfectly normal. But at his 1 week follow-up, he had already started gaining weight. That's when I said yesterday that he had gained a pound. So he was perfectly healthy. There weren't really any complications. At the end of my delivery, this didn't make the notes. It's kind of funny though. At the end of my delivery, I ended up on oxygen because my heart rate was, or maybe it was my blood pressure. I don't remember. Liam's blood pressure was dropping though, and so I was basically running out of time before they were going to vacuum him out, and I did not want that to happen. So they only gave me, my nurse's name was Emily, or my midwife's name was Emily, and she had told me that they needed to get him out of there sooner than later, and that they were only giving me 2 or 3 more contractions before they were going to take measures into their own hands, because his blood pressure was dropping pretty quickly. And so it only took 2 more rounds of contractions, and I had pushed him out. And so anyways, in that time though, they had to put me on oxygen because I was also having some issues breathing, and I was feeling super lightheaded at this point. And so come to find out, when they give you your epidural, when they administer it, they also give you a little wand with a button that you can push to keep administering the epidural into your spine. I forgot to push it. So at the end, when I was becoming super lightheaded and they ended up putting the oxygen on me, one of the nurses looked over, saw that I hadn't been administering my epidural, so basically it was pointless, and had said to hit the button a couple of times to try and help me out at the very end of the delivery, which he came out so fast that it didn't matter. So fun fact, if you get an epidural, try to remember to actually use the little wand, little button thing that they give you, because there's a point for that. So anyways, that is the labor and delivery story. I think that's everything. If I remember anything else, I will put it in the comments, and if you guys have any questions about it, then just comment below. And let me know again if there's anything else you guys want me to do a video on. I will. So, alright, talk to you guys later. Bye.